I'll be the first to admit that the initial reveal of Super Mario Wonder didn't really excite me. Sure, the Wonder mechanic was something the series had never seen, and the game was sporting a fresh art style, but I didn't get the impression that it'd be something I'd enjoy, because 2D Mario in general hadn't appealed to me in years. My first 2D Mario experience was New Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS back in 2006. There was this palpable sense of variety throughout the game, interesting level motifs, unique boss encounters, and all kinds of tricky platforming setups to find star coins. I also enjoyed experimenting with Mario's movement. You could triple jump, ground pound, bounce around in a Koopa shell. It was so much fun. It also helped that it was one of my very first video game experiences ever. I played NSMB Wii and 2 just as frequently, as they felt like evolutions of that original game. It wasn't until I was older that I realized just how similar all these entries were, and as a consequence, it's been quite a while since I've last revisited them. Despite my nostalgia, I find these games basically indistinguishable from each other. That isn't any single game's fault. Nintendo opted to keep the same art style, the same world progression, the same power-ups, the same music, the same everything across all of these games. It just makes the idea of returning to them now feel unappealing. With the new Soup games being my baseline understanding of 2D Mario, I found the original games from the NES and SNES to be nothing more than cute novelties. They lacked the movement variety that felt like a requirement to me, so I could never fully get into them. Of course, I recognize that they are great games in their own right, and important stepping stones in gaming as a medium, but every time I go back to these old games, it just feels like there's something missing. What I tend to crave most in 2D platformers is a challenge. Something that the Mario series, aside from one game that's nearly 40 years old, doesn't offer. Other games have come into my life since my introduction to 2D Mario and pushed the envelope. Hollow Knight mixes together platforming, Metroidvania, and Souls-like elements to great effect. Celeste's crushing difficulty and exquisite pacing makes putting it down impossible. Donkey Kong Country constantly presents you with new ideas and gorgeous environments. Pizza Tower offers the speed of classic Sonic games with the great level design of Wario Land, all with a hilarious main character and art style. These games all present a satisfying level of challenge, but their appeal also transcends simply running and jumping from right to left. 2D Mario just doesn't really have that going for it. As a result, I now find myself disconnected from the series in its entirety. All of this to say, I wasn't exactly chomping at the bit to get in on Mario Wonder. I couldn't imagine a world where a new 2D Mario game could meaningfully impress me. I followed the pre-release marketing, hoping that maybe there was something the game had going for it that Nintendo had yet to showcase, but that never really materialized. But then, the game released to unanimous acclaim. 10 out of 10, the most inventive Mario game in years. People had nothing but great things to say about this game. After hearing all this praise, I didn't feel just a passive interest in checking the game out. I was excited to play it. If there was a game that would make me like 2D Mario, it would surely be this one. After booting up Super Mario Wonder for the first time, I immediately took notice of just how different everything looked and felt. I don't think the trailers properly conveyed just how gorgeous this game's art style is. The world was vibrant, the movement was tight, and perhaps best of all, Mario had never been more expressive. The animations revel in the absurdity of the Mario universe. Characters do that silly little run where their feet are in a million places at once. They wiggle their legs when climbing up pipes. Mario even forgets his hat when going through sideways pipes, and sticks his head out the other end to survey the area. It evokes a similar feeling as the animations from Cuphead. It's like I'm watching a cartoon. It really can't be overstated just how much this affected my enjoyment of the game. Going back to NSMBU for this video was genuinely painful. It feels like soulless, corporate-friendly slop by comparison. Mario's animations are stiff and one-dimensional. When he goes down a pipe, he literally just stands still and sinks into it. No unique animation to speak of. The world map, despite being the best of the new Soup series, feels similarly vapid. We're still traveling through the same world and level motifs on a linear path. Mario Wonder, on the other hand, feels alive. The developers iterate on ideas from the series past, while also introducing entirely new ones. For starters, this game takes place in the Flower Kingdom rather than the Mushroom Kingdom, so the developers weren't confined to any series conventions regarding world themes. World 5 is the biggest departure, a toxic mineshaft featuring tons of hostile new creatures. Returning motifs like grass, lava, and desert worlds feel distinct from past titles, because Mario Wonder doesn't care to unite all levels under the central theme of a world. The new Soup games wouldn't dare make a single level in the final world a non-fire lava meteor level, whereas the Petal Isles in Wonder featured numerous different settings. I love this change, because it means you never quite know what to expect when you hop into the next level. It amplifies the curiosity and, well, wonder this game makes you feel. The number one source of life across all of these stages are the new talking flowers. They'll comment on things happening around them, or give you hints about nearby secrets. Some people find them annoying, but I genuinely feel that their presence adds so much personality to these levels. Their dialogue frequently got a chuckle out of me, and the over-the-top voice acting just works great. I mentioned before that most of my favorite 2D platformers are games that pride themselves on their difficulty. Nothing I was seeing about Wonder made me think it would resonate with me on a mechanical level. The introduction of the badge system showed promise, but I was never expecting this new Mario game to sufficiently challenge me. Ultimately, I ended up being correct. What I did not account for, however, was the game resonating with me through creative level ideas. It sounds silly in hindsight, because that's been the case for every other Mario game I've played and liked, but then again, we were coming off Mario U as the most recent 2D Mario. As I alluded to earlier, my skepticism proved to be unwarranted by the end of the first level, and completely faded away by the end of the second. The second level of the game takes place in this rich forest. The greens of the treetops are complemented by the bright glow of the sun beaming through the leaves. The game introduces you to the level's gimmick, the music note bounce pads. You play around with those, hang out with the piranha plants, take a trip to the background of the level, but then you find the coveted Wonder Flower. Collecting it makes the surrounding piranha plants break out into a musical number, and the environment syncs up with the song. Prior to this level, I was under the impression that the extent of the Wonder Flower gimmick was that it just changed up how you platform through the second half of a level, and it wouldn't meaningfully influence the stages. Needless to say, my jaw hit the floor at this moment. All my preconceived notions of this game waned, and I was eager to see what else Mario Wonder had in store for me. I had a similar experience with a level much later in the game, the one with those cute little Goomba predator guys. Mamas, I believe they're called. I was already sold on them as new enemies at the start of the level, as the game teaches you that they can both aid you and sabotage you. They'll eat anything that stands in their path, be it Goombas, power-ups, coins, whatever. It's a lot of fun watching them chow down on the Goombas. It reminds me of that moment in Metroid Prime where you get to unleash a bunch of Metroids on some unsuspecting space pirates, and sit back and watch them struggle. Anyway, this level is business as usual until the Wonder Flower turns you into a Goomba, and you have to creep your way around the Mamas, all while your movement is greatly inhibited. This setup makes for a tense sequence in an otherwise easy game, and as a result, is one of the most memorable levels in the entire game. There are tons of other Wonder Flower gimmicks I'm fond of, like the spiky ball level, the levels where you walk on the walls, the silhouette levels, the bull level, and more. Not all of them are winners though. There are multiple flowers that lock you in a certain portion of the level and simply have you collect 5 golden coins. There isn't anything wrong with this objective itself. The problem is that this concept can be found all across the game, and it quickly loses its luster. There are these challenge rooms present in various worlds that ask you to find these coins, but they all have their own unique gimmicks as well. However, they're a lot less fun than the Wonder Flowers. They'll use things like invisible platforms and off-screen rooms to hide some of the coins. Very often, I'd find the first 4 with no issue, and then spend a long time just trying to find that final coin. When I eventually figured it out, I never had an aha, I'm so dumb for not finding this sooner moment, and instead, the placements felt kind of cheap. These coins had already left a bad taste in my mouth, so seeing them pop up in levels as the Wonder Flower gimmick was a bit disappointing. And if I may nitpick, there were a few Wonder Flowers that reappear more often than I would prefer. The skeleton dragon that comes to life after activating the flower pops up like 3 times. It's really cool the first time, but the later return of them with no changes made makes me wish the developers could have come up with something else. I feel similarly about the Blob Mario stages, even if the concept is pretty cool. Even if some of the more underwhelming wonders stand out in my memory, it doesn't bog down my perception of the mechanic. They stand out because the rest of the game is bursting at the seams with creative ideas, and that's what matters to me. I'm willing to overlook a few misses. I mentioned the Golden Coin Challenge rooms earlier, but I'd also like to discuss the other types. There are the badge stages, which test your proficiency with certain badges, and the KO stages, which have you fight hordes of enemies under the gun of a timer. I enjoy the former, but I'm not as big a fan of the latter. I feel the KO rooms would have been a fine idea if they had just been used once or twice, but they got repetitive and boring by the end of the game. I would have preferred if each world housed a unique kind of challenge room aside from the badge stages or search party stages in place of these, like some kind of special stages. This may seem nitpicky, but it did bother me enough to want to bring up here. The badge stages, on the other hand, remain fresh throughout the entire experience. The nature of these stages force the developers to stay creative, as each badge has an entirely different gameplay application from the others. Each action badge has 2 stages, with the second being the more difficult one. Not only do their learning curves present fun challenges, they also allow the player to try out each badge organically. They may find that they like a badge they otherwise wouldn't have considered. This leads me to perhaps my favorite addition to Wonder, the badges themselves. They add a host of new movement options and tools to utilize, which is what 2D Mario has been sorely lacking to me. I don't think there's a clear answer to which badge is the definitive best, as they all have unique strengths that make them viable. Vertical levels will likely be made easier by the double wall jump badge, whereas horizontal levels that feature lots of bottomless pits may be more fit for the parachute cap or the grapple vine badges. These badges add so much variety to your movement options in any given level, which is most apparent when hunting for secrets. Most secrets will be easier to find or grab with a certain badge equipped, and they reward the proficiency you've been building up in the badge stages. Past Mario games would often gatekeep secrets behind power-ups, so it's nice that the badges are relied on a bit more to cut back on repetition. Speaking of power-ups, there was a noticeable lack of them in Wonder when compared to past 2D entries. Aside from the standard mushroom and invincibility star, there are just 4. The iconic Fire Flower returns, along with 3 all-new power-ups: the Drill, the Bubble Flower, and the Elephant Suit. The Elephant Suit was highlighted during the reveal trailer for Wonder, so that made me think the developers were going to implement all kinds of wacky new animal power-ups, but that unfortunately was not the case. Regardless, I'm not upset about the power-ups we did end up getting. The Drill allows you to burrow in the ground and on ceilings, along with granting you immunity to most things that may fall on your head. It's my least favorite out of the 4, but I won't deny that it has its use cases. The Bubble Flower is a contender for one of my favorite power-ups in a Mario game. It cannot be overstated how useful it is to be able to create platforms at will. It also makes short work of just about any enemy, so its utility is off the charts. Finally, the Elephant Suit allows you to use your trunk as a horizontal melee weapon, which is quite useful when looking for secrets especially. You can also store water in your trunk and spray it on withered plants for all kinds of rewards. It's an interesting premise for a Mario power-up, but I think it proves itself as something more than a marketing gimmick throughout the course of the game. Truth be told, the small selection of power-ups manages to stay interesting throughout most of the game because they're far more versatile than most other Mario power-ups. The Elephant Suit grants you the strength to break blocks and destroy bigger enemies in addition to everything else, and the Drill's burrow ability can be used just about anywhere. The only other comparable power-ups I can think of are the Frog Suit from Mario 3 and the Penguin Suit from NSMB Wii, but even those have just half the utility of Wonder's power-ups. They contribute even more tools to add to your movement repository, which is always welcome. Overall, Wonder is a pretty damn good game. As much as I may grumble about the difficulty being too low and some rather lackluster Wonder Flowers, It makes great strides in moving the Mario series forward. The art style is incredible, the new power-ups are all neat, the wonder mechanic is ingenious, the badge system is just about everything I could have hoped for, but above all else, the game was just plain fun. I enjoyed my time with Mario Wonder a lot more than I expected I would. Never have I felt such a desire to play through every level, hunt for secrets, and just experiment in a 2D Mario game. I couldn't be happier that the developers recognized the faults in the new soup formula, and identified exactly how they could breathe new life into a declining series. Although, I suppose it's worth noting that you can never count out Mario to bring forward fresh, new ideas. One of the producers of the game, Takashi Tezuka, credited many of the new ideas in Wonder to the younger developers on the team. Innovations, quote-unquote, between the new soup games mostly amounted to a few new power-ups, maybe some new music and level concepts, and that's about it. Wonder, on the other hand, feels like the leaps that a new 3D Mario would take from the last. The badges and Wonder Flowers are unlike anything the series has ever had, and that excites me a lot. To me, this move signals that Nintendo is much more open to breaking free of the conventions of Mario's past, and that there are likely tons of ideas we have yet to be privy to for future Mario games. And given how well this game has been selling so far, I don't think we'll have to wait much longer. I still hesitate to call myself a full-on 2D Mario fan, but wherever the series goes next, I'll be there. Hey, you've reached the end of the review, but not the end of the video. Really quickly, I just wanted to announce that I now have a Patreon page. It's always been a dream of mine to be a YouTuber, but being as small a channel as I am, there's no guarantee I'll make any money off the video I spent the last month or two making. My hope is that Patreon will help me out a bit. Of course, I'm no freeloader, so there will be plenty in it for you. You'll get your name in the credits at the end of all my future videos, access to a patron-only Discord server with me, and many other things that are on your screen right now. Donating is absolutely not required. Only do so if you happen to have the money lying around. I'd really appreciate you heading over to the link in the description and seeing if there's a tier that strikes your fancy. That's it from me. Thanks for watching.